Hello and welcome to this week's Madaxeman podcast, number 18 in our lockdown series. Quite remarkable. Are back as well with all your usual painting chat, planning chat, and all other sorts of rubbishy chat. So sit back, enjoy your painting, dip yourself in your wet palette, and off you go with the podcast.
This means war.
Oh my God, it's week 18 of pseudo lockdown as lockdown kind of drifts apart around much of the civilized world and most of the southern half of England. So we have a full set of 7 back again this week, first time in 3 weeks. So I'm sure that'll make things go much more smoothly and much easier, much less chance of interruptions. Now there's more people around the table or around the Zoom screen. So diving straight in there with our traditional start, or our new traditional start of answering questions we didn't really ask last week, but asked the question for and tried to answer. And I'll just go round, starting with you, Mr. Saunders. First question is, what percentage prevalence would you say for French rugby shirts in 6th century AD Europe? Give me a percentage number. What do you reckon?
Well, from what I'm painting at the moment, I'd say about 20%.
20%. Mr. Webb, what about you? You're a rugby man. 15.
It has to be 15.
Because it just has to be. Oh, 15%. Okay, all right. Tamzin, your thoughts on rugby shirt fashion, 6th century Europe?
I'm more league than union at its club level, so I'd say 13.
13. All right, 13%. Mr. Leroy Mayer, go to give us your gold and green sort of stuff.
60%.
60%. Everyone's wearing a rugby shirt. Adam,
Other than the Italians.
Other than the Italians. I imagine your son is probably like captain of the rugby team as well as all his other sports. What's your rugby jersey percentage for Western Europe in the 6th century AD?
20%.
What? And Mr. Finkel, pick a number, pick a percentage.
10.
10. Straight in there. 10.
I imagine most self-respecting hairy barbarians wouldn't be seen dead wearing a rugby shirt, especially if it's a French one.
No, I guess not. Excellent. Next question up would be, interesting question. Is it ever fair to let your kids play with your best toys? Peter, straight to you. Easy answer.
Yes.
Yes, you've changed your mind since last week then.
No, I didn't say best toys.
Oh, right.
I'll let them play with the best toys. I won't let them play with my knights.
All right, the effective
They'll
ones.
only beat them with me. But they play with it. We've had a couple of games back and forth. He's played with the best toys.
Right. Adam, what about you in terms of the parenting around the table?
Christ, no. They're allowed to look at them, but it's like if they want to actually play with them, they say things like, "Is it okay if I pick it up, Daddy?" And I say, "As long as you're careful." When they're very, very respectful. That got taught to them at a very young age. Very, very young age. All right. Anybody else? Anybody got any strong opinions on this? A Saunders?
Definitely not.
No. There's a Leroy Mayer saying no. A Saunders?
No children.
No children. What about your flatmate? Would you ever let her pick up your toys, so to speak?
No, she doesn't. She's not really that bothered by it, I think.
Right. Fantastic. Tamzin, what about you?
No kids.
No kids. Nobody touching the toys. And Mr. Finkel, what about you? Family members, all the rest of it?
Yeah, my son used to play Warhammer and stuff like that. He's more into the fantasy side of things than historical, but we did play some games. He's the one that got me into War Master, the fantasy version, and he's a very good painter when he bothers, but he's interested in other things now.
Right, okay then. And then finally, we will say, what's the best paint of the Vallejo ranges? And we're comparing their urban graffiti concrete paint to their tartan. Who uses the tartan? Who uses the concrete? Mr. Leroy Mayer.
I use neither, but I'd go tartan just because it sounds cool.
Just sounds good. Saunders, have you ever used tartan paint?
No, I would definitely be a concrete, being a 60s mid-century modernist. So I would definitely go for concrete.
Okay, Adam, what's your thought? Tartan paint, big thing for you, or concrete paint?
I don't know.
You just don't know. Fine, we'll move along. Tamzin, which one? No, you obviously make up your own and do it much better, I imagine. Just make it out of small bits of things you've collected in the woodlands. Peter, what about you?
It would have to be tartan paint because I've painted a couple of Gaelic armies, and you've got to get that whole plaid going and everything else.
If you can just do that with a big brush, that's all good. And Andy, what about you then?
Gold spray.
Oh, definitely tartan. We've had holidays up in Scotland. We're big fans of a Scottish band, which they retired a few years ago. So it has to be tartan.
Tartan, straight out the bottom. Straight out the bottle. Always best one. Fantastic. So,
Absolutely,
in terms of what have next up is obviously what have we been painting this week?
This means war. This means war.
So again, if I pick on the people who are literally painting as we speak, which is almost most people, I'll start with Adam. What's your week in painting? So you missed out on the podcast last week,
Which works out quite well because I've just spent 2 weeks. I'd started painting 24 Roman Auxilia.
Oh,
and
yes.
they're kind of done. I'm just doing the bronze bit around the shields, around the edge of the shields, and the only thing that's yet to do is the shield patterns. And I've spent ages humming and hawing, thinking, "Am I going to buy Little Big Man?" Because for what they are just annoyingly expensive. And in the end, I went, yeah, all right then. For the Romans, I will. But as I carry on doing 25 mil, I'm not going to buy it for everything. But so I put in an order, and that will be thudding through my letterbox probably in the next few days. So the transfers are going to be put on and based and kind of done. Question.
Yeah.
Little Big Man Studios. What I'm planning on doing is the shields. I haven't put onto the figures yet. It's made them so much easier to paint. And I undercoated the shields white because I was thinking putting the things on, stickers on top, that's better. Then I was thinking, because I've already put the painted slop onto the figures, but no, I don't want to put it on the transfers, do I?
No.
What you need?
What I was planning.
Yeah, go on.
What I was planning to do is just put them on, and then I've got some sort of paint on gloss varnish. I was going to put that on to sort of like give it a seal.
Spray
and
gloss
then
varnish would be better.
Sorry?
Spray gloss varnish would be better for that.
I know, but I don't want to. Because I'm going to. Oh, well, I suppose I could spray it before.
I find the best secret is to do white base coat, then gloss varnish, then the transfer, then another coat of gloss varnish, so it's sealed between two coats, and then the matte.
Okay, so I put varnish on first. Interesting.
You do gloss varnish,
and then baby champ.
Yeah, and baby champ, because there's an actual technical answer about gloss varnish is literally a smooth surface, which is why it's slightly shiny, but matte varnish is on kind of a micro level, kind of bumpy, which is why the light doesn't reflect back off it. So you actually get less air bubbles and things on matte varnish, or so people who are better at this stuff than
gloss,
they say. Sorry, yeah. So you get less air bubbles on gloss varnish and more air bubbles under matte varnish. And when you're paying, 30 quid a transfer or whatever it is, it just doesn't. It's worth actually doing it. So it adds an extra step to it, but you seal the shield transfer in and then do matte varnish on top. So that's my my handy tip of the day to make your 30 quid investment better.
I'll probably go out and buy the gloss varnish.
Halford's clear lacquer.
Yeah, no, I think I've got a can actually. It was handy. And how? Because the other thing I was thinking, because it is the Little Big Man Studio stickers transfers for this company's shields for Victrix. They do it for Victrix.
Yeah.
So how much of a perfect fit are they, or am I going to have to sort of like colour in the blue bits around the edges?
You will.
Well, if it's anything like the ones they did for War and Empire, they're not all a perfect fit.
Okay.
There's
so
a
I'm
little
going to
bit
have to
touching up. Yeah.
You might have to touch around the edges a bit.
And paint going on top of gloss varnish, is that kind of okay? Or because that sounds
fine. Not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not doing much of it at all. Really not doing much of it. Just getting a pretty close colour match and filling it in. But otherwise you'll end up with a little white line just inside your black sort of silvery line.
Okay, but on the whole, it's like 24, 28 mil figures in 2 weeks where I haven't been trying that hard. I'm very, very pleased with.
No, that's good. Okay.
So what have I been you painting that for? Is it fog or ADLG rather?
ADLG, yeah. So because it's like, and I'm going to do the double-sized bases so that each base can look interesting, as opposed to, because old-fashioned toy soldiers, they would have all been standing there holding a spear, whereas now they're going to be sort of like, some are going to be breakdancing, some are going to be throwing spears, some are going to be giving it stabby. So it's all the ADLG sort of double base thing is big enough to make it kind of interesting.
You can have some fun with it.
You can get a little wedge going of them as well. Base some of them in a wedge if they're attacking properly. That's
exactly
cute.
that sort of thing. It's like one might have a bit of a shield wall going on, another one with a wedge. Sorry,
it's in the you got it, didn't you, Tim, in Spain? The where they do the shield wall thing.
The 15. Yeah, that's 15 mil testudo, isn't it, as a single piece?
Yeah.
That Spanish company.
You can get 25 mil testudos, I think.
Yeah, I think they have.
I'm trying to think who does it.
I think it was Warlord, wasn't it?
First Corps do some.
First Corps as well. Okay, in metal.
Yeah, but you could do a cross section of one, so not like to fully fill it out. So you could actually have them sort of built out just as something different for the heavies.
Mm-hmm. I've got
first Corps one might be resin rather than metal.
Okay.
So they do produce a fair bit of resin stuff as well.
Okay.
It's just if you're going to all that trouble on doing nice shields and that, you might as well actually show them all off.
Well, I've got 2 bags of the Victrix Roman attacking thing, because I wanted my Roman legionaries to look like they were getting stuck in. I'm not into this idea of all the sort of like Romans lined up in shield wall. It's like I want them to look like they're sort of like giving it the stabby action to the barbarians.
They're not marching to battle; they're in battle as you speak.
Yeah.
All right, going around the houses, Mr. Simon. What about you?
I've finished off this week 4 pike and shot units for ADLG Renaissance. So I've done the 4 Swedish salvo guys, and they've just been varnished. Hang on.
Wow, just as we speak. On those 80 by 40s, yeah?
Yeah, these will be 80 by 40s. So with all official Swedish banners, which are all heavy metal bands.
The death metal, yeah.
Yep, and I've done them all in the as the Yellow Brigade. So they are the elite salvo. So all the soldiers got yellow uniforms. So they'll look quite different to the rest of the troops. And they've all got little cute QRF regimental guns.
Oh, very dinky, super dinky. So you fit them on the actual base then? It's not a marker.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to make them as an integral part of the base. So it's going to be pike muskets. I've also got some commanders, drummers, and the regimental guns. So they're going to be very tight, but it should look proper.
Okay, and that's with the QRF figures as well, was it?
That's all QRF. So the Piker Museum, because I had them from their sale in January, but all the musket are from the range they bought just during lockdown, and they come out quite nice. So I've got some with the holding, where they got the musket hold on the rests.
Stand.
And some also slightly pointing up, so I get that idea of the 2 rows starting to fire together. And then got a few sergeants with big axes and that, just to motivate people. So look really good.
Okay. And do they scale up or rank up compared to the museum pikemen? Because museum guys are sometimes a bit tall, aren't they? Compared to they're veering towards it. So the shooters match the pikemen. Yeah.
Yeah, so what we've got here is one of the museum pike on the 45 degree.
Yeah.
And then right next to it is the sergeant. The sergeant's a little bit smaller, so you can almost think the pikemen are 6 foot, and all the management are about 5'8", 5'7", so a bit shorter. But you give the big guy the big stick.
Yeah, and that kind of works.
And then I'm just finishing off one of the Warlord games, Prince Rupert 25mm Renaissance generals.
Wow.
Just because it's a nice figure and it looks really good. So I'm going to make this up as a strategist for a Renaissance army. He's got his little dog. I got the poodle. We have
Yay!
Poodle.
Hey, Prince Rupert's poodle. Fantastic.
So,
Simon, sorry, important question. The banners you've done of Swedish rock and roll bands.
Yep.
One of them is the Hives, isn't it?
No, it's all Sabaton and.
Oh right, it's even heavier than the Hives. It's like proper, proper death metal.
I'm a proper power heavy metal fan. So, yeah.
The Hives are light and frothy compared to that, for sure.
Yeah, I know, but they're still cool and stylish.
They're still the hives, aren't they? All right. Tamzin, what have you been up to this week? Again, we were talking about your fantastic buildings and concrete last time. So what's made it through this week?
Well, so some more scattered terrain for Judge Dredd, so various bits, and another building. So
And yet another one. Yeah. Well, that's lovely. Little vending machines, phones,
and another building. And as I say, another building. So that's third proper building, 4 if you count the burger stall.
The Speedy Mart, and posters and things like. Oh, the roof comes off, and you've got some slightly empty shelves. You're not going to tell me that you're going to start making 23rd century,
God, no, I'm not making up 21st century
shopping utilities or whatever. Yeah,
cans and whatever, and
no
cereal boxes. So no,
not
that.
Are the seats all 2 meters apart?
I suppose it's interesting actually. It's interesting that you've got. Sorry, excuse me, I'm opening another beer here. That you've got phone boxes there by the looks of it, which must, I guess, date Judge Dredd from being started from an era where they thought the future was one that wouldn't have mobile phones for everybody. That's quite an interesting kind of concept. So they still knock those out then. Wow. Are they all MDF or are they more of the resin stuff?
All of it. All of the scattered terrain is resin.
Okay. Is that more
so
into casting stuff?
A mix of Antinosity's Workshop and TT Combat.
Okay.
Sort of the paving slab plinths that the phone boxes and newspaper vending machines and so on are MDF. But
God, imagine a future in which there's both phone boxes and newspapers. That's suddenly kind of hard to do now, isn't it? It's kind of weird. Wow. Okay. Yeah, and people recycling bottles as well. People have given up on that a long time since. Wow. Yeah. Okay. And you said, I think you were looking at possibly starting some figures this week as well. Did they not quite?
Yeah, I've got a couple on the table at the moment.
Okay.
So you should finish those in the next couple of days. That's a couple of grav surfers and a biker.
Okay. All right. Mr. Saunders, you were, I think, waving Breton jerseys at us aggressively earlier on.
You talk about rugby shirts, so I've been painting rugby shirts.
Yeah, because last week you were telling us that you were a bit disturbed that your irregular warband looked like an irregular warband.
Yeah, so I've cut them from 8 base figures to a base to 7.
Okay.
And I've done sort of like 2 at the back.
Okay, so it's a little pseudo wedgie sort of thing.
So they're sort of like wedgie, yes. They're wedge-like. And I think
they look good.
They look much better like that than the ones I was doing. So now I've hit on a system. I've got a bit mad. I've done 12 bases of warband.
Right.
Wow.
Well, I guess if you're putting less on a base, you can even do more bases.
Yeah. So, now I've basically I've done 4 bags so far, and I reckon I've got 14 bases out of that, and that still leaves me about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bags of warband left. So
you could do like nearly 30 bases then.
Well, I've decided I'm going to turn it into 2 armies.
I think that's probably
Are you
a good
now
idea.
using your wet palette?
The wet palette is still to be perfected.
Right.
I've given it a go. I can see the point of it, but I think I need to. Basically, I've ended up with a wet, soggy load of paint, which is all mixed together.
Right. It's all
So
running.
Sounds like too much water. Sounds like too much water in.
Yeah. I think this is a long-term learning project.
Yeah, I did actually have a look on Amazon and kind of, it's bizarre because it's a box with 2 bits of paper in it, really, isn't it? But there seem to be all sorts of reviews on Amazon where people have really strong opinions about them, and then you end up getting suckered. Then you end up get suckered into the reviews and go, oh, should I buy something that's a plastic box that's people? And then you look at them and like the ones that people like are about 25 quid. And I'm just going, it's a plastic box.
Yeah, well,
what's going on?
You can try it out, just having an empty sort of like margarine tub, cleaned out, of course. It's just the reason for the boxes and that, it just makes it a little bit easier. But if you've got, say, a flat Tupperware or something like that, you can try it out simply with some blotting paper and then the baking paper over the top. Simple. Especially when it's warm like this, your paint dries up very quickly. You're going to waste paint. once you get the hang of it, you don't need to have it sopping. You just have it damp, and that dampness allows it to the paint just to stay fluid that bit longer.
Yeah. So is this something you use all the time then, Peter? Or?
I used to use it a lot more. With COVID and everything else, I've had to give up my desk where I've got some more painting and that. So I'm a lot more compact now.
Well, are the NHS using it as a Nightingale hospital or something? You've not got patients laid
down
out
the road. They are, yes, funnily enough.
Right.
But
if you were painting 25mm figures in the wet palette would make sense. Because you'd be putting a lot more paint onto the wet palettes. And
when I was painting my Britons, because they were doing multicolours and I was doing the stripy stuff and everything else, it was great having a wet palette because I could go in between the different colours. And I've used it on a couple of other armies as well. It was like some of the medieval ones where you're just using it in dibs and dabs and different colours, and you want to have that variety. But you don't want to, be putting a load of, especially Vario, you squeeze a bit out and then you feel like you're wasting it. You can actually have a whole selection to do a variety of colours as you're going across it. And that's what I appreciated and enjoyed with it. I mean, I know people like Tamzin a lot better with sort of mixing colours and shading and things like that. I'm lucky if I get the paint in the right place and not all over me. So, for me, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So is it important that whatever sort of pot you use seals up airtight? Is that, or do they hold the stuff anyway?
The reason for that is that you can actually, if you want to have a break, go for lunch, you can seal it up, go for lunch, you come back, open it up again, it's all still fresh, it hasn't dried out at all. That's the whole idea of it. So you can, when I was using it a lot and I got it sort of like, the nice balance and everything else, I could close it up, come back 2 days later, and it's like I'd only just squeezed the paint out.
Okay.
And you're not then watering the paint down again by adding more water to keep it fluid, so you get the same consistency. So you can still have that high pigmentation level without watering it down and without it drying out straight away. So, I'm talking myself into getting back into it.
Yeah.
It's just getting around to it.
But would you pay 20 odd quid for one though, or would you just go, no, margarine, there's a limit?
I found one for £6.
Right.
It was perfectly nice. I've
the artist brand ones are probably cheaper than the modelling company ones.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's
And they're normally bigger.
Can I just add a reasonable but contrarian voice here? It all sounds like a lot of poncing around for like very marginal games, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I'm with Adam.
When I was painting my Swiss 15mm Swiss Army fog several years ago, I was using.
It made me a better painter for me because it stopped me being lazy. Because when I've got to get out another half dozen colours and everything else, it was nice. Like doing the Arab army, I did. Using the inks and using different colours and that, it just meant I put more variety into it as opposed to just going, well, I've already got this colour out, I'll just use this one. So from that aspect, I quite liked it. I don't know, it's each their own. I quite enjoyed it. It works out for me, but still I'm not using it at the moment. I've got a normal palette because I just haven't got the time and space.
Yeah, I must admit, the thing I'm finding at the moment, that point you made, Peter, that paint dries up so quickly in this weather that it's just disappearing. I end up with a little bit of spare MDF that ends up being kind of sort of a mountain of paint over the years that I use, and you're just so conscious that that's a lot of paint that you wasted. And then you get to the bottom of a jar that will bottle that much earlier and run out, and then you have to wait 3 days to get it through on Amazon or whatever. So I'm just tempted by the idea, but I think maybe Tamzin, your point is actually, you don't actually need to get a good one because it's going to be a while. You could just spend a few quid on it.
Yeah, you don't need to get either Army Painter or Red Grass Games ones or Privateer Press ones. Just give it a go. Yeah. Yeah, just go to an art shop. Go to an art shop, and you should find one there.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's what I did. Just I think I spent £6 on it. Normal art shop one. They're prevalent over there because when you're using watercolors and the water-based paints, as you do painting normally, pictures such like. You're going and you wanted to mix and blend the colours more. So that was the key reason why you had the wet palettes, to be able to do the blending without it drying out. Because if you've got that perfect blend, and you can do the shading layers. So that's when I used it originally, a number of years back, before I was back painting miniatures. So
okay, in your watercolor period when you were doing.
Well, it was water-based stuff.
Right.
That wasn't very good, so I went back to miniatures.
Right. I can imagine a whole set of like badly painted pictures of badgers hanging on your wall or something.
It was a polar bear.
Oh, polar bear. Right. Okay. Then.
Yeah,
and Andy, what about you this week? What have you been painting?
Well, I finished off the Breton cavalry, all 12 figures, and I'm now painting Carthaginian elephants. The only valuable tip I've picked up is obviously to use a big brush, but apart from that, I'm kind of making it up to go along. So I'm going to various shades of grey.
Yeah.
Got any advice on painting an elephant? Use a big brush. Brilliant.
Use a spray can.
Well, in hindsight, it was a bloody stupid question, so I deserved it.
Yeah, that's the answer you do deserve for that one, isn't it? Really. Did you manage to find a way to use your Dremel? Did you manage to find a way to use your Dremel on the elephants?
Not the elephants. They didn't need dremeling, but I did a bit of an experiment at the weekend. I found, when I finished tidying up my wargaming cupboard a few days ago, I found some of the other old War Master army I did. So what I've done is I tried a trial game of ADLG with it on 40mm square bases, and in the course of that I found a dragon which the wings had come off. So I used a Dremel to drill holes and stick a little bit of metal in there to stick the wings back on. So I did do a bit of drilling.
Brilliant. I knew that as soon as you got it, you just start looking around everything you own and go, what can I drill a hole in here? It's just like, you can't resist, can you? It's just like, you'll get through that phase eventually, but we've all done it. Just like, could I improve this by drilling a hole in it in some way at all? So pinning things together is a good one.
Yeah, drilling the muzzles of gun barrels.
And what's the?
No, I messed that up.
No. What's the make of the elephant?
Metal. War and Empire.
Oh right, okay. Still sticking with their Carthaginians.
I want to have a look at it, but.
A more serious question on painting the elephant as well. What colour are you painting? And I know the obvious answer is grey, but painting elephants I always find interesting, because the correct answer of what colour is an elephant is really the colour of the last colour of mud it rolled in. But you've kind of got to paint it grey, otherwise it doesn't look like an elephant. So how are you getting what are you going with the colour? I think
we had a whole discussion about this a few weeks.
Yeah. I'm suffering deja vu.
That was a unique conversation that went on.
Yeah, these elephants remember that.
Little khaki colour.
Right.
These are North African, not Indian elephants.
That's almost an entire podcast in itself.
Carthaginian elephants. Right. The Carthaginian elephants were North African
dwarf elephants,
jungle elephants, and they're extinct now.
Yes, but we still don't know what colours they were.
Exactly.
So they might have had glorious plumage or something like that.
They're all probably killed by their owners.
Yes, they could have been painted in all the historical documents. We may never know. Yeah, maybe they should have had a Vallejo reference like tattooed on the sides or something in all the.
Those Vallejo special kits for elephant painting.
Yes, indeed.
With 10 paints.
Yeah. Well, I think from my point of view, this week has been one of snipping and gluing. I've been using the famous frame plastic piece.
Or snipping?
Snipping.
Right, yeah.
Snipping stuff off the sprue. And I've done, I think, I'm really slightly horrified to think, I think it's about 60 cavalry in 28mm plastic. So I've got about 60 horses. I've left the other guys on the sprue, the riders and stuff, because I just thought, once you start realizing how many horses there are and how much I dislike painting horses still, I thought I'll actually try the same technique for the 28s as I did for the Hungarians, and do the horses first, so that I'm forced to get them out of the way, and try and do it with layers of different ink on sort of darker on the bottom of the horses. So I made 60 horses, and then I filled the gaps in them with polyfiller, which I kind of water down quite a lot and then sort of paint it, because all those Gripping Beast and I think these are Fireforge horses as well, they don't quite fit together. They're nearly good, but there's just little bits. So what I do is I paint them with polyfiller, wet polyfiller, and then when that's dried, because it dries really quickly, you can kind of rub the stuff off so it flattens out the join lines. And then because the weekend was quite decent, I managed to get them outside and sprayed probably about 85% of them white, so that I can do them in different types of browns and duns and things like that. And then the other sort of 10-15% black, which includes a few which are fully barded, the new Gripping Beast Goth Cavalry horses, which are fully barded. So some of them will have metal barding and some of them will have painted coloured barding, which I'll use for the Arab sort of, elite cavalry, where they've got bows or lances or something like that. But it's still, I was looking at the infantry. I've only got one pack of the infantry and then a few odds and sods of metal ones. And today I was just suddenly thinking, actually, I should get some more infantry, because once you start thinking about a few spearmen and the rest of it, that 40 or 50 infantry disappears quite quickly. And I had a look online at some of the other metal figures just to mix them up. And the price of metal stuff is just completely random. It just makes no sense. I was looking at some, what's it called? Footsore, the footsore Arabs, because the footsore troops are really nice and they look quite like the Gripping Beast plastics. They're quite simple figures, but nicely proportioned. But they are now £9 for 4, which is a big number. And I thought, surely they're not all that, because I have bought some of these things in the past. And then you've got a range. You've got £9 for 4 from Footsore. You've got £7.50 for 4 from, I think, Artisan, which is a North Star brand. I think you've got, 8 for £12 from Foundry, if they do a handful of Arabs and some of their other ranges. And then Perry, which are obviously really nice metal figures, are 6 for £7.50. So going from 4 for £9 to 6 for £7.50 is just completely weird. I don't know whether the price of metal's gone up and the Perrys haven't adjusted their prices yet, or whether Footsore are just, somehow got very expensive. But I've bought Footsore stuff in the past in army packs, and I don't remember it being that crazy. But it's just a bonkers amount. You kind of think,
the thing is,
44 plastic figures for £22, or £22 for 10. That's a huge change.
Maybe the
figures have really come on now as well.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Footsore.
Why would you?
That was for guard infantry that were £9 for 4. Their others were £7 for 4.
Oh right, okay. Maybe I just saw some of that. So £7 for 4 is still £2 a foot figure though, which or nearly, which is.
But when you get plastic figures now, it's a basis of about £1 each for plastic figures on a sprue.
Well, 50p from the Gripping Beast Arabs. You get 44 for £20.
I want to get some metal cavalry knight stuff for. I discovered one that I have nearly enough 25mm figures for an English feudal army. So I wanted to get some knight figures, and I've seen the Conquest. I've got a pack of like feudal knights, and I thought they look quite nice. I haven't bought them, I just thought they might be the right ones.
Yeah, that's kind of 12.
Yeah, Conquest games. Conquest games are not do make nice miniatures.
Yeah. Is it kind of 22 quid type bracket for?
That's for the dozen plastic ones, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, that's the number. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got their Norman knights.
I think it might be more than a dozen in a box from Conquest.
Really? Okay. That's usually
I think it might be 15.
Okay, that might make a difference then. But yeah, so I'm going to have to steel myself to do that. And then the other thing, I bought a 1/250th scale. I think it's 250 scale village made out of card by some sort of weird German company. I bought off eBay because I was thinking for my 10mm Napoleonics, I want a slightly smaller scale buildings than the infantry. And so I've been starting to glue together these card-based buildings. But is that one working? So there's a little kind of tiny house here that looks all right actually. It's and I think for about 20 quid, I've just got a whole town with walls and things. It's a bit of a bugger to put together unless you're a German who this is your hobby and you've got a very, very careful craft knife and a lot of patience. But they're okay actually, and that you can toss them around, and I might stick them on bases, I might not, but it's just something for those little towns for some Napoleonic stuff when I actually get around to putting that on the table. So
the stone granary, remember, that's the one you want.
I'll have to look out for that particular one. I think I got a kind of medieval town set with just stacks of them.
Yeah, that would do. And I bet somebody does a stone granary of Essling at 10 mil.
So I think when I make some of these things, the only thing is I keep looking at them thinking they look like the little boxes that you get the tiny Smarties in. So maybe I'm going to have to do them so you can kind of flip up the roof and just use Smarties for ballast or something like that. And
Smarties, then you've got the incentive to capture them.
Exactly. Yeah, if you win them, you can tap out some of those mini Smarties or something like that.
This means war.
So look, with painting receding into the distance, it's a question of what we actually do with these figures, and a quick run around or do with the figures virtually through Tabletop Simulator now as well. So if I start sort of top right, Mr. Saunders, have you managed to get online or playing at all this week? Yes.
I played Andy yesterday.
Yeah.
Again. And we had a practice for warfare, which is a competition where you've got to have 2 compulsory elephants, and I walloped Andy.
Right.
I lost 8 points.
I didn't do that well.
Yeah. So what were the armies? What were the armies?
Shite.
But I think there's still some things with TTS, Tabletop Simulator, which I need. We keep bumping into terrain, so I need some advice on that.
Okay.
We need to make the terrain flat and things because they seem to fall over. We had elephants spinning up and down, round and round.
We couldn't work out how to keep the elephants flipping over on the field.
Yeah, some of those fields have got a lot of texture.
I've got my first international game lined up for Thursday, so I'm playing a very nice guy called Dave Ray that Andy Finkel's plays. He's in America. He's in Wisconsin, so I'm playing him. I've had a conversation with him. He knows all the American guys we know. There's Mark Plateau and Dan Hazelwood. So that was fun, So I'm quite enjoying that.
He's a nice guy. Yeah.
Isn't Wisconsin the home of American cheese or something? You need to watch out for some of his cheesy moves.
Was that Jack? Whatever it's called.
Possibly Jack. I think there's a lot of cheese in Wisconsin.
I thought it was Philadelphia.
Oh, soft answer. Right. So that's that one. All right. And so what were the 2 armies in the game that you played, Dave?
So I was using Hindu Indian, and I can't remember what Andy was using. He was using Seleucids with he had mediocre elephants, and his mediocre elephants were facing my elite elephants with embedded generals, which wasn't a good mix.
That makes quite.
He also had and what I liked about your Indian army is you had the Rajputs who dismounted and suddenly became uber hard infantry.
Yeah, they're actually. It's well, I'm giving away too much here for warfare. I think
no one will remember.
Well, I think in an elephant competition, the Hindu army is good because you can put down. You've got four elite heavy cavalry impetuous. Which, if you put them down and they're not facing elephants, that's great. But if you do face elephants, you can dismount them and turn them into medium foot, elite, impetuous with armor. And they're actually better dismounted than they are on their horses, I think.
Yeah, no. I wonder if
especially
that's one of the things
with an embedded general in one of them who's just absolutely brilliant. He kills everything.
I wonder if that's one of the things they're going to pick up on in the next iteration of the rules. I think dismounted troops who are better than anybody else who's dismounted is probably a bit of a flaw. Something. Yeah. So Andy, were you using a kind of a Raffa-esque Seleucid army? Did it just not work? Or
Well, to get 2 elephants in it, I thought I needed to go for sort of the later version with the Argyraspirades, the imitation legionaries. And your elephants are now mediocre, and you've got 1 proper cavalry. You can have the Galatian elite cavalry, and I had 3 cataphracts, and I had a heavy infantry centre of 2 pikes and 3 of these armoured legionary type guys. And then my Death Star was 2 mediocre elephants, 2 Lightfoot, 1 Thracian, 1 javelin man, and I think a bowman.
Yeah, that sounds like you took a spoon to an elephant fight. Really, I'm already struggling to think if there's going to be more elephants around. You're not wanting cataphracts, and you're not wanting armored Argyaspids, really, because neither of them are going to be great against them.
In hindsight, I thought that the Carthaginians would actually work better, and they've got medium impetuous infantry. So I thought that might actually be work better against elephant armies.
Yeah, you can just throw it at the swordsmen who sit between the elephants and hope that the Carthaginian, the Gallic warriors just burst their way through, overrun the swordsmen in a mad, hairy charge.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Andy, have you played any other games? You're normally king of Tabletop Simulator.
Well, I played Dave Ray last Wednesday. We were using Nicophor. He was using Nicophorian, and I was using Normans. I went for a Normans in Italy type style army with an Arab ally, thinking, well, I'll get lots of impact mounted horse people ganging up on his impact cavalry, and he just shot the hell out of me. I did do a full badger on him and charged him with 6 impetuous medium knights, but he bugger ducked out of the way.
Wow, they just shot you down. It didn't work.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, right.
I mean, some of my die rolling was pretty horrendous, but then I was overdue a kicking from the dice gods anyway. After 1 or 2 previous games from him, so we're having another go this week, and I'm going to see if I can do any better with the same army.
Okay. No, I do remember the last couple of weeks you've been telling us how Tabletop Simulator seems to suit you, and you do very well. So 2 crushing losses in the same week is a good bit of the old Central London reset button, I guess, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, a dose of reality.
Yes, a dose of reality. Yeah.
Peter, thinking I'm better than I actually am, which is always a good thing.
Peter, what about you? Any intramural, intra-family games this week?
Just a couple of practice skirmishes. I haven't had a lot of time this week for work and other bits and pieces, so we just had a couple of practice things, trying out a couple of items. So nothing on the same stage as before. We had a lot of fun playing a few other games, and we're due to play a few more this weekend.
This is all Ancients on tabletop, or any other games? Or?
Well, Ancients. My son's trying to get me into a couple of computer games at the moment, but
right.
All tabletop stuff at the moment.
Okay.
Actual on the table, using Ancients, pushing stuff around. I think he's still trying to make the Vikings work. So we've had a couple of conversations about it. So how he's going to change the commands and how he might mix it up a bit. And I'm trying for the perfect launch of the Badger Knights screaming in on him. So
right. Okay, full Badger.
And, Badger Knights, I think.
Definitely. And Adam, what about you? Any in-house games at all?
No in-house, but I have had a honest to goodness live proper face-to-face game with ADLG.
Oh my gosh!
Congratulations, well done.
Yeah, it's lockdown kind of over. I went down to Entoyment and I had a game with ADLG in Entoyment. They've got a few tables out upstairs, spaced out, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I went and played a proper game of Toy Soldiers.
So was it 15 mil, 25 mil?
15 mil.
Yeah.
It was. I was. My opponent doesn't have too many 15 mil armies, so he was using Macedonians. And because I wanted to use something Bronze Age because I've got loads, and it's nice to give them a run out, I used the later Assyrian. And a few weeks ago, when we did the later Assyrian list discussion, and you all voted against mine and told me it was rubbish, I thought I would use that to prove the point.
Yeah.
So I used that. Sorry.
And you lost?
Oh yeah, I had my arse handed to me.
Yeah. So who did you actually end up playing? Who did?
Paul.
Oh, Paul. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah,
so
are there people drifting to Entoyment? Were there other people playing, or is it still?
Days, all the tables were full. Yeah. But by all the tables, I think there's 5 rather than 18.
Right. Okay.
So they're sort of like well spaced out.
Yeah.
Sort of like I haven't been in a pub yet, but I presume it's what pubs have done. You know what I mean? Instead of having all the tables in, they're well spaced out, and there's like 2 people playing each other. And it's kind of the lockdown's kind of really over and winding down, and I got to go out and play toy soldiers.
So did you? Was it because it's indoor? I guess. Did you mask up, or was it just enough space that it's not necessary yet?
Well, we didn't mask up. And it's kind of weird because I'm there thinking, should we? Because the government's saying if you're in a shop from Friday, it's good. But now you don't need to. And the sort of like rationale of if you're only with someone for a few minutes, wearing a mask might be useful. If you're there for a couple of hours, then if you're going to give it to them, you're going to give it to them. But I don't know. It's like, as probably similar to everybody else, I'm in a weird place with the whole lockdown COVID thing, because they're telling you you've got to wear a mask in shops, but meanwhile pubs are open and you don't. And it's like, I'm just going with doing my best to be careful, to be perfectly honest.
So do you think they'll be insisting on masks from Friday? I guess they might have to. It's sort of the law. I
don't think so, because I'm not going there to shop. It might be because it's in a shop you do, but if you're in a pub, you don't have to. If you're in a restaurant, you don't have to. Otherwise, it would make it very difficult to drink and eat. I think the answer to most questions since the beginning of March is I don't know. And I'm still going with I don't know.
Yeah, because we've been talking about this on the Central London group, because the pub where we meet is now open again, and the landlord is actually keen for us to come back, or happy for us to come back.
Playing today?
Yeah, there's a couple of people playing as we speak. Well, I think we've looked at it and said
to come back.
Yeah, I think we've looked at it, and the landlords, because pubs are now table service, so you can't go up to the bar, which means the room that we're in that's normally open to the bar, they're going to close off, so that would just be gamers. And I think if we really squeeze it, we can get 10 or 12 tables in there. But really, we're going to say, right, 5 as a maximum. And you only are supposed to talk to the person you're playing. You're not supposed to go over and chat to the others. And I think, am I right in thinking we've kind of got a consensus that you should be wearing masks, although that might be driven by the fact we've got a kind of a King's College senior anesthesiologist as one of our gamers down there who's gone, that's a good idea.
Yeah,
who's also very, very useful for hangover cures. He is very good tablet for hangover cures.
Very good for having some of those things.
That's definitely what you need in a wargaming club.
Indeed. So I think, I think Central London's probably going to have 2 or 3 or 4 tables and kind of drift back, but we can open the doors and have it outside and not have people passing through. But I think the mask question will be interesting to see how people work on that, because it is a pub.
My understanding was he was going to lock the doors so you couldn't get from the normal part of the pub out to the outside by going through the annex where we play the games.
The gaming zone. Because then there's only ever going to be like 4 or 6 or 8 people in that part of the building.
But okay, question on the mask then, because it's like the only real rule that Central London have got is buy a couple of drinks when you're there to pay rent. Which doesn't really work with masks.
No, not really.
Straw.
Yeah,
that might
straw possibly. But,
just don't point at the other person while you're drinking it.
And he's not serving food now for the moment.
No.
I'm going in next Monday to play a couple of games, and because I'm off, I'm going to play a 1 o'clock game, and then I'm going to play a 4 o'clock game.
Yeah.
So I'll know what's going on. Then I'll be back for the podcast afterwards.
Okay.
You can give us a sit rep.
A report from the club,
Okay, we'll have that next week then. Good.
Dave, does that make you the roving reporter?
The roadie reporter.
Roadie reporter, yeah. And then, Simon, I believe me and you actually played a socially distanced outdoor game. I do know. I'm not Simon. I believe I was there. It's true. I've got photos. It really happened.
We do have photographic proof. Yeah. So you kindly had a little backyard. We could have a game. So I wandered on down, We had an outdoor table. It was brilliant. We had wine, we had beer, and we had a table.
Yeah.
After that, it didn't really matter.
No, it was
great.
I think outdoors seems to make a big difference, and if you're sat across the table, you're kind of a meter apart at least all the time. And it's only two people from two households. There's no other people in the pub or the room or wherever. So we dished out two armies which had never, I don't think either had seen the light of day before in terms of being on the tabletop. Yours was Ottomans, was it?
Yes, I brought the Ottoman Empire because you wanted to bring your nicely painted Hungarians. So Hungarians, Turkish seemed appropriate.
That works, yeah.
And so I had my museum Janissaries, which have never seen the light of day, and various other units all came on. The mighty Azrabs and the Voynoks, who could be swordsmen, who could be spear, could be
and heavy artillery and a war wagon and all sorts. Yeah,
it was all great fun.
Yeah.
And you went a full badger on me, and my Kapakuli and all that got absolutely eviscerated.
Yeah, no, it was channeling the spirit of Peter. I was looking at the different ways to put up the Hungarian army, and it was kind of, okay, all these figures are new. What army list can get the most new figures on the table? So I think I managed to creep up to about 25 bases with a lot of light foot and stuff, and some mediocre spearmen.
Still went full badger.
Mediocre spearmen, because I wanted to get the spearmen on with their shield patterns and stuff. But then it was 8 impetuous medium knights in 2 blocks of 4, and they kind of trampled across about the open half of the table. The rest was a bit cluttered with terrain, and managed to squish the Kakapuli and the other Sipahis against the back of the table, and then force them to fight. And they didn't fight for very long. And so I think it was an Ottoman win with probably about 15 or 16 gone out of the 25, probably something like that by the end of it. So
so bearing in mind all the conversations we've had about lists,
Yeah.
Is it a case then of an Ottoman army without Serbian allies got run over by a bunch of knights?
Yeah.
I've got this one for you. I bloody told you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was terrain, though, wasn't it? This was very terrain.
Yay!
We had so half the table. So the Ottomans lost the initiative and deployed. So with the defenders, and we had half all the bad terrain took up basically half of my deployment zone.
It was 1/3 of the table all the way across, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of.
So the Capricornia, so I had 12 or so heavy cavalry and light horse, had about 14 UD to play with, and naturally that's where you put all the knights going. Well, I can see where the heavy foot are going to go, and they so swimming forward.
Yeah, I think the terrain really didn't do you any favours at all.
How good does it feel just to roll over them?
Oh, it's grand. Particularly with brand new troops, but I think the Janissaries ran through the rough terrain and then mugged my mediocre spearmen, but not as fast as my knights ran through the open terrain and mugged the Krakopoli.
And one thing I did forget, because when I was debating who to charge, completely forgot Janissaries are swordsmen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so I was worrying about, so I was counting some of the factors as bow.
So you were trying to, that's why you were trying to work around the flank of my spearmen and attack them in the flank rather than just walk up to them and chop them to pieces. Yeah, your elite swordsman would have done quite well against my mediocre heavy spear. Honestly, they could have just gone straight through them.
Yeah, this is what happens after not having played a real game in 18 weeks.
14 weeks, yeah.
It sounds like a samurai at the world.
Sam, did I hear you say you had a heavy artillery and a war wagon?
Yep.
Well, what you should do is what Adrian Clark did when I played him a couple of years ago. Park them in the middle of the table and say, right, you fancy some of that, Mr. Cavalry? And your knights tend to get out of the way.
No, what Tim did is the knights saw where the artillery was and side-shifted a couple of UD, stormed after the mounted, and I only got 2 shots with the artillery.
Oh, I see. Right, okay.
Yeah, I think a couple of knights dismounted and just kind of took it on, and eventually got there. So, but look, getting stuff out on the table was grand.
Brilliant.
I think it could catch on potentially. I think this computer thing maybe as lovely as it is, it may not be the way forward. Definitely may not be the way forward.
But it was good to working with the Central London theory, especially Tim's and my tactic of why did you bring this army to this competition? Because I just painted it. So that's that was the entire design choice for our games.
Yeah, for both of them, I think. Definitely for both of them. Yeah. That was good. Excellent. Well, look, that's the roundup of the week's gaming.
This means war.
So having talked about what games we played, I guess, and I'm talking about this personally off the back of an enormously fantastic, wonderful victory against people in sort of the Balkans and stuff like that, which is almost bringing us back to our traditional story of Napoleon going kind of down that way against the Austro-Hungarian Empire and beating up the Austrians and getting to Vienna. I think that actually did happen last week when we were talking about it, vaguely.
Yep.
But if I'm trying to remember correctly, we were almost teasingly on the start line of Russia. We got reverse vodka Brexit being the political impetus for Napoleon deciding that he was bored with the Russians, and all his troops were kind of revving their engines. They got their little Panzer IIIs and Panzer IVs ready to pile in across the Ukrainian steppe. I think that's part of the things. And then the hammer came down on us last week, and we ran out of time. So this week, I'm guessing, and looking at the full set around the table, we're kind of into that whole Napoleon into Russia kind of malarkey. So now that the music is fading into the background, so he's there, he's ready to go. It's all happening, or it's not all happening. And is he the first person to realise that invading Russia is not going to be not going to be a good idea? Had anybody messed this up before? Was he just confident and cocky and just quite short?
The Swedes had tried.
Yeah, but they start closer though, don't they?
Yeah, they're a lot closer.
Didn't one of the Swedish kings end up in the Ukraine with his army?
The Polish-Lithuanians did quite well against them.
They've had a go. All right. So he's not necessarily thinking this is a complete disaster. So he's not thinking this is impossible.
No.
So does he just like go, right, let's do this on Wednesday afternoon, lads? Or does he psych himself up and prepare and build a massive army and supply chain? Or does he just go,
he built a massive army and supply chain, so he has lots of
600,000 troops
throughout Germany and sort of the friendly parts of Poland.
Okay. And which way does he go? Does he
he goes through Poland into Ukraine.
Okay.
So Belarus, he's in Minsk and around there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Towards Smolensk. Kind of more sort of northerly.
Yeah.
Sort of northerly, middly part, kind of in World War II terms, kind of the northern bit of Army Group Centre.
Right. So he's got these like French, German, Austrian, whatever. Well, probably not Austrian, but Dutch.
Yes, he did have Austrian allies. Yeah.
Austria as well.
Yeah.
And they're all marching through the Ukraine. That's got to take quite some time, hasn't it?
Not Ukraine.
Not the Ukraine.
He's more to the north.
Yeah.
He's more to the north.
So he's marching through Belarus and sort of bits of Poland. And is it quite a long way to proper Russia, or is it suddenly like you're in Russia because they used to own it?
Way.
Yeah. So did he? He must have worked this out, mustn't he?
Well, yeah. The Russians are not. The Russians are being very unsporting and not standing to fight. They're basically
Russian army was split into two.
Okay.
Yeah.
And either Russian commander in charge. I think was it Bagration?
No, Kutuzov was the main guy. Yeah.
Okay.
But Bagration had one of the armies.
At that point, knew from the past that Napoleon would mass and take out each one separately, unless he was able to retreat. So he kept both Russian armies retreating until they were able to link up.
Right. Okay. So he's got one army and he's chasing. He's chasing two armies.
Well, Napoleon's army, the Grande Armée, is split into 5 or 6.
So he's in 6 armies then. Right, that's a bit bizarre. So he's got 600,000 men. He's split them into 6 armies.
you can't march 250, 300,000 troops all together in one block. So it's several separate columns.
So they're all marching in different columns through Russia. They're picking up, vodka and potato-based products, possibly a bit of soup made out of those purple potatoes and things. Potatoes as well.
Crackers.
And this is what, in spring, I imagine, because that's when you do this.
It starts in June.
He starts in. That's a bit late, isn't it?
Well, Hitler started in June.
You need grass.
Well, yeah, but that didn't work out well either, did it? For the old
yeah, but you've got to wait for the muddy season to finish, haven't you?
Okay, that's as soon as you get there. So he's off and running. And has he got a strategy? Is he like trying to bring the Russian army to battle, or is he just doing the "I'm off to Moscow" thing?
He is, but Russians aren't playing ball.
So there's basically Benny Hill music around most of Belarusia and Poland and the Russian steppes.
Have you ever seen Minard's graph? It's a great data representation.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah,
of him marching up. I'll show you it, but it's basically this is the whole thing. That what happens is he's basically ends up charging after the Russian army, who consistently fall back, and you can just see the thing over time. And the data geek for me, it's fantastic because what I'm showing you, Tim, is a modern version of it. So it's in ink, a bit more coloured. But basically, the red line on the older version.
But the width shows the size of the army, and it gradually gets thinner.
And it goes out. The red line goes out, hits Moscow, and then comes back a lot thinner.
Right. So were the Russians doing this deliberately, or were they just like cowardly little dogs?
Yeah, they did it very deliberately.
Sorry, no, there's an historical debate going on there. Some people say the Russians did it deliberately, and the Russians were sort of going, "Yeah, we did it deliberately." But there's also a case of Napoleon was trying to trap them, so they kept running away, and because before they built camps and they built fortifications to fight. But so there's a debate whether it was absolutely deliberate or whether they just got outmaneuvered and all they could do was run away.
Right, so he might have been too clever for his own little Napoleons boots.
Yeah,
that's Napoleon all over, though, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the width of that graph, Tim.
Yeah.
By the time, even before they get to Moscow, you can see that the width is about half the width it was before.
So what happened to these people? Did they just like fall into ditches? Did they, meet comely Russian themselves and decide to grow potatoes?
Starved, got captured by Cossacks, all sorts.
So
you got captured by the Cossacks. That sounds painful.
Yeah. Started hitting the supply chains. You've also got troops getting injured, getting sick. Usual fevers and everything else. The usual burnout rate. But then you've got the certain key battles along the way.
So the Russians did stand and fight a couple of times then.
So the main battle was called Berezina, known as the Bataille de Moscow in French, and the Russians lost, I think, approximately 50,000, and the French lost about 30,000. I've heard years ago David Chandler being interviewed, and he said it was a bit like a jumbo jet crashing every 5 minutes all day in terms of the number of casualties.
Wow, and is that in? So why did the Russians decide to fight then, if they were kind of attriting the army just by running away?
Well, because they were on the edge of Moscow then, so it was the last defense before Moscow. But then when the Russians lost, they said, well, bugger this, we're going to walk off and torch Moscow. So Napoleon came in, it was a Pyrrhic victory, he came in, and with Moscow burnt and all the supplies taken, they did the scorch earth territory. And then there was nothing for Napoleon to do but to retreat at that point.
Yeah, because the Tsar refused to surrender.
One thing that we haven't mentioned is Russians were operating a scorched earth policy on their retreat to deny the ability to forage, live off the land.
Which is the key thing that the French army always did. They always foraged all the way through Europe. And that was the campaigns before then. They never took a decent supply train, unlike other armies.
Right. So basically, we've got something which, even though it's massively famous and popular with wargamers, involves a decreasing number of French people walking a long distance, not fighting any battles, getting hungry, and dying of starvation. Which doesn't strike me as a great, and just getting more and more, which doesn't strike me as a great kind of war game scenario, really. And particularly as we started this whole Napoleonic malarkey with something about special types of food with chicken and added crayfish or something. So is this just like really grim? Is there no real military shit going on here?
They did. There's a lot of skirmishes on the way. So if that's the whole point. There was an awful lot of skirmishes, and that's what drove it down. Then you've got the two big battles.
Couple of large battles, and then one very big battle.
So if this is all about skirmishes, is there a Russian sharp who swears in Russian? Has that been done? No?
Yeah, probably a Cossack.
Probably a Cossack sharp or something. So he'll support Shakhtar Donetsk or something instead of the mighty blades. So
yeah, on the way back it was death of 1,000 slices.
Right. Okay. And Borodino, other than lots of people dying and it being near Moscow, was there any? Were they just so exhausted they couldn't do anything clever? They just battered each other frontally. Did anything interesting happen?
It's back to that argument.
When you'd have your cavalry charging into a redoubt, that was quite interesting. It wasn't so much fun for the cavalry, but it was an interesting incident.
So was that just a frontal slog with just shed loads of troops?
Borodino, there are various silly mistakes made by the Russians, i.e. that there were large gaps, the redoubts weren't fully manned and supported. But some of the redoubts changed hands several times during the battle.
Okay. So it's just a proper old war game. Fill the table wall to wall with loads of troops, just throw them at each other, kind of wargaming as Barker intended, but in Napoleonic terms, and just take fistfuls of figures off, really.
You had a situation, for example, where an entire corps of Russians stood still under French artillery bombardment for 2 hours because nobody told them to move.
Right. That's fear of your management, isn't it? Really.
And the battle might have been over for the Russians a lot earlier if it hadn't been for one of the Cossack commanders who led a sort of wide flanking move that he wasn't supposed to, and fell on French cavalry who were about to do a charge.
Do the coup de grace or something. Okay.
So, no, it was actually fairly early on in the battle, so it wasn't a coup de grace.
Right. So I'm still kind of, I guess I've got a slight feel of disappointment here, because we've had the glorious dashing Napoleon doing all his clever stuff, kicking the Austrians around Europe. He then gets, slightly obsessed with reverse vodka Brexit. He builds up the biggest army the world's ever seen. He piles into Russia. Other people have done this before at this time. It's not a complete disaster. And then the Russians just don't want to play. There's one big battle that's kind of just a slugfest. And then the Russians burn their own capital city down. And Napoleon gets to this capital city and goes, I can't be asked. Could he have carried on chasing them to Siberia?
No. Most of his horses had died.
Oh, okay. So when was this then? When did he get to Moscow? How long did this actually take?
October 18th.
September he got there.
Freezing. There was no food at all.
Okay.
They looted Moscow.
But there was nothing really left.
One of the few buildings left standing was the cathedral, which they used as sort of kitchens, stables, barracks.
Okay. Very small stables if they haven't got many horses, I imagine. But yeah. And what about Lenin's Mausoleum? What do they do with that one? Oh no, that wouldn't have been there, would it? Really? That was no, probably not.
No, not the time.
No, not that time. Okay, so
the
Russians refused to negotiate.
Harassed by the Russians, particularly by the Cossacks.
Yeah.
Who, on at least 2 occasions, almost captured or killed Napoleon himself.
Right. Okay. And he was just too little. He managed to hide behind a sofa.
They didn't recognise him.
The other key thing was the day they started back, it was 0 degrees, and it got colder from there onwards. So by the time they finished and got back to their winter barracks in Poland in December, it was down to -30.
Okay, that's tricky. So
and down to about 5,000 men at most.
Well, the numbers, there's a debate on that, isn't it? But got pretty well decimated. Also another heroic thing during the retreat was the bridging of the Berezina River. Napoleon had to get rid of his bridging train because they were running out of horses and stuff. And so the Russians got to this river called the Berezina, and basically they'd no way of crossing it. And the Russian army's close behind them. And by now, most of the French army is a rabble. It's just a bunch of fugitives staying with the main body of the army. And one engineer officer had kept a couple of wagons with some bridging stuff. And he and his men stood in the middle of this freezing river for about 2 days building this bridge. Most of them died of exposure, but they managed to make a bridge and get quite a few French guys across and stop them being completely wiped out. And in fact, a large number of French fugitives panicked and ran across the bridge when the Russians turned up, and the bridge collapsed. But Napoleon managed to get some guys away. But the French army was basically, you start off with 600,000. There was about maybe 80,000 Prussians and Austrians on the wings who didn't go as far as Moscow. So most of them got out fairly intact. But
those Austrians again, they always
main
survived,
Allied army, about 90% of them never came out of Russia in
Yeah,
1813.
the Prussian Corps actually came to a treaty agreement.
Tauroggen, yeah, they kind of changed sides at the end of that campaign.
Very sensible.
With the hands of the King of Prussia at the time.
Okay.
Even during the campaign, Napoleon probably had good reason to suspect that the Prussians kind of said to the Russians, let's not try too hard. Let's just let's use bad language and dirty looks, and that's about it. And that's all that they really did, even when they should have been fighting. And at the end, they went, shall we be friends? Yeah, let's be friends.
Yeah, we're on your side. You've done well. You're the kind of winner here. All right. So I can see why, retrospectively, we picked melancholy music. So all the dash and vim and elan and fancy stuff is kind of not so cool. So he's back in Poland, and he's got bugger all people left, and some of his friends have changed sides, and the Russians are still exporting vodka. There has been no reverse vodka Brexit thing going on, or possibly there has. The Russians still exporting vodka. They're still buying, Yorkshire puddings and bitter from the north of England that's getting shipped to them via Smolensk probably. And he's just lost about the population of a very, very, very large city on the way, and just by doing it, and everybody in France must know someone who isn't there anymore. So how does that pan out for the boy when he comes back? Golden Boy seems to have, I'm guessing he's lost a bit of his luster.
Well, yeah, indeed. But he in about November time, before they get back to the Russian border, he hears of trouble in France, which he needs to go and sort out political
I bet he does. What, does he go? Does he pick up his mobile and go, oh, look, I've got a call. I've got a rush.
Just
really sorry.
A dental appointment, yeah. So he buggers off back to France, leaving Marshal Murat in charge of the army, and issues a bulletin to people in France saying the emperor is on his way home. The health of the emperor has never been better. Which kindly certainly ignores the fact that the health of most of his troops was hardly ever worse.
Right. Okay. So he rocks up back in Paris, and nobody's been reading the papers from Moscow or anything like that.
No.
He's just kept it a secret, this loss of 500,000 men.
I think a third summary would be French people figure out it didn't go well,
right.
But the nation rallies to their ruler. And the French go, well, he's the man. We're on his side. Let's do our best. So most of France throw themselves into recreating the French armies. France hasn't given up on him yet.
Okay.
They've got the largest population in Europe at the time, so they seem to be able to reconstitute the army.
Well,
but he's lost.
But now you're talking like the German Landwehr in World War II, 16-year-old kids and Crocs and people like that, and
plus
it's
a lot of people who aren't
quality of human material than you had before.
Right. So he's back in. They've
lost so much of their cavalry, and at the same time, quality of their gunpowder goes down at this point.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that. I did know they had serious problems shifting guns around because they had very few horses to drag them.
Getting access to high-grade saltpeter for making gunpowder.
Okay, this is just like a world of disaster, isn't it? This is
the British Navy had trashed them.
Right. So if you're like somebody who likes wearing white trousers and blue coats, this is just like pretty grim. So the Russians have avoided bringing him to a decisive battle. They've kind of let him get away, and the Russians are back on their borders going, ta-da, we don't have to do anything. He's back in France, but I'm imagining other countries have heard that he's messed up a bit, even if he's managing to manage the French press a bit, and they must all be thinking, brilliant, he's on his knees, they haven't got an army. Shall we have another pop at the guy? Is there any, say...
That's exactly what Prussia does.
That's
exactly
does.
what Prussia does. And Austria goes, well, we'll sit this one out for a bit.
Because we've done that before and it even never works.
So we're moving on. I think that's the 18, 13, 14 campaigns.
Yeah.
Couple of important things.
Carry on to next week for those.
Okay.
Couple of important things to say, however. The Russian army, even though it chases Napoleon out of Russia, suffered loads. It wasn't retreating, but it was advancing in minus 30 degrees with no food.
Okay.
And the Russian army isn't in the best shape itself.
Right.
So that gives a breathing space. And the other important thing, wargaming-wise, is Borodino's one of those sort of like classic bucket wargaming battles that you've kind of got to do if you're a wargamer before you die.
Okay. Just because it's a massive slog of people doing stuff.
Yeah, I've done it.
There's nothing clever happens. It's just slog. But the table groans under the weight of figures. Yeah, I need to get some green spray paint, don't I guess, and get them all looking raggedy. Okay, so we've had a kind of a canter through of the famous Moscow thing that I sort of knew was quite grim, but I'm left with the feeling that it was much more grim, even from a wargaming point of view, than I thought it was from a human loss and sacrifice point of view. I think on that note, it's time to call in the melancholy music. So on that depressing note, I guess let's look at something good and try and compare. We've talked about the sad ending of the great Napoleonic army, and I think that almost flips us nearly perfectly onto the sad ending of the Byzantine Empire, or Byzantine Empire.
The Roman Empire.
The Roman Empire, one of the many Roman empires, other than the ones in southern France.
Which is a proper pronunciation, by the way. Are you a Byzantine or a Byzantine type of guy?
In the 80s, it was Byzantine, and since the 2000s, it's turned into Byzantine, which is just weird, I think.
But what about Byzantine? Is that a new
Sounds
one?
like a bedtime drink, Byzantine, like Ovaltine.
All right, there is no answer to that one then. Clearly, we can't solve that one.
When I studied Byzantine history at university at UCL, it was Byzantine, and now it's, as you say, Byzantine.
Byzantine or Byzantine?
Yeah,
it's a mystery.
This means war.
Look, looking at this empire, there's myself and Tamzin have both been trying to make some sense of this list 245, which is I think it's 245, which is one of the less popular kind of lists, but it's got lots of different options. But some of them, as always with these lists with different options, you could make it into 6 or 7 different lists and fill loads more pages, but they'd all be pretty similar. And some of them you probably wouldn't choose in favour of other ones, really. So let's have a quick butchers at what we've got here. So I've got up on screen first is Tamzin's army, and Tamzin, looks like you've started by going for the Empire of Nicosia. So I guess the starting point is why that one out of all the other different lists, and then do you want to talk us through command by command? With your 3 commands and what they do and how they're made up.
Yeah. Well, I went for that one, basically because that's one where you get the most Frankish knights.
Right. Nice and simple, definitely.
Yeah. And as it looks at this was my second iteration of the list. First list I actually had went with a bit some more infantry, but then realised you only got 2 heavy spearmen. You can have bowmen, and that was pretty much it. So I'd say
it's a couple of javelin.
2 heavy
I think
spearmen's not enough to make an infantry command. So I decided
all mounted.
Minimise the infantry. So I just went with 2 light infantry bowmen, one of the commands, because that's the minimum you can take, and then everything else mounted. So first command.
Your first command is what, 6 knights, isn't it? And some support.
6 knights. So you got 2 medium knight impact elite and 4 medium knight impetuous ordinary. Along with 2 light cavalry bow ordinary and 2 light infantry bow.
Okay.
And they're with a brilliant general for CNC. That's sort of hard hitting.
That does what it says on the tin, doesn't it? That almost needs no more explanation. That's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Then the other 2 commands, commands 2 and 3 are identical. So you got competent commander, 3 stratiotai.
Sounds good enough to me.
With one medium cavalry bow and 2 light cavalry bow in each of those commands. So it's just go around flanks. I support the knights, going against anything that's a bit weaker that the knights shouldn't be wasting their time on.
So this is really 12 impact cavalry spread across. There's 12 impact mounted. There's 6 knights, 3 heavy cavalry, and then you've got a supporting cast of you managed to eke out 6 light horse, so that gets your initiative up to 4. I see, which is kind of it. Okay.
2 units. That's not too shabby.
It's not too shabby at all.
I
do. Dave,
I switched 1 unit before I realised that my list was illegal because I'd only put 1 light infantry bow in.
Yes, that needs to be tweaked. So Dave,
I originally had the impetuous knights as impact, but just downgraded them to impetuous to get the second, to make the list legal with 2 light infantry bow.
Yeah. So do we class 4 impetuous knights and 2 impact as a hunting badger?
I think we'll come to Peter and ask him for his badger rating.
Quite bristly.
6 knights there later, I think. But Mr. Saunders, if I start with you, what are your first thoughts on this one?
Well, because the stratiatoi are compulsory, having heavy cavalry impacts, and they're only ordinary and they're not elite, they're a bit of a weakness, I think. But Tamzin's got them well covered with light horse. I think that's quite a nice little army, that. I like it. It's got damn good initiative to get moving quickly. It's got 2 strong wings in the heavy cavalry. I mean, obviously terrain is an issue, but then I think it's quite good. I quite like that. I'd be tempted to. I'm just looking at the list to see what's legal.
And you put some mediocre bowmen in. That's what you want to know, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. My original list did have 2 mediocre bow in each command, but
that was just to try and get Dave's vote, wasn't it?
The classical way to play this army is to go Paleologian Byzantine, have the Serbian ally, and have the medium swordsmen, sort of the basic Almugavars and things like that. And that's, but I quite like this version, which is just all mounted. You've got some shooty cavalry there to shoot at anything in terrain.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's good.
Not too bad. Adam, what about you? What do you look at this?
I'm kind of with Dave. It's sort of like it hits hard. It kind of works. It can manoeuvre. I quite like it. The only thing I'm thinking of is before Peter gets in, what are you going to do against all the elephants?
Yeah, that's a
that's not a problem. You dismount them and charge into them with the knights.
Yeah, that could be it. So Peter, this is halfway to you, isn't it? This has got a full. Does this count as a full badger worth of medium knights?
Yeah. Well, as Dave was saying, or Andy, it was basically it's a hunting. No, it is full. It's full stack of knights, isn't it?
It's a full 6.
I think we're saying about hunting badger if it's 2 impact, but I'd just drop maybe one of the stratioli to bump them all up to elite, or one of the Pechengs. because sacrificing a medium cavalry bow to suddenly have 4 elite medium knights impetuous.
So you can only have two. You can only have 2 elite.
You're only allowed
2 elites allowed.
No, you can't. They can only be ordinary or mediocre.
Yeah. Well, then the other thing I'd possibly do to take advantage of that is maybe split the 2 groups up to give it a bit more flexibility, and have one with the commander included. Then you've actually collated the extra points, so you can actually bump up elsewhere. So I'd actually have maybe one with 4 knights with the brilliant, and the 2 medium knights in another one as a small micro command, and then have a couple of the heavy cavalry around with the impetuous knights to cover the flanks of it. So then you can really have the overlap. So then you basically have basically a swing group of 1 command. It's using virtually the same troops. I like what you've picked, Tamzin. I'm happy. I'm going in. I'm stomping stuff. I'd just make better use of your commanders, which would free up a couple more points and give you a bit of flexibility and keep the opposition guessing a little bit. That's the only difference.
Okay. Andy, what about you? What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, my first thought is that it's very much just one way of operating, which is charge in with mounted. But given that it's doing that, I do think that it's quite well designed and composed, in the sense that I do think you want to keep one reason for keeping all the knights together is you've got 1 command which can move at 3 and everybody else can move at 4 or 5. So those other 2 commands with the competent leaders can zip around fairly handily. I think if you come up against an army which has got a lot of bow foot, you're going to be in difficulty. But hopefully with an initiative of 4, you can win the initiative and put down minimal terrain and kick out other people's terrain to make it less difficult for them. But
that's what it says on the tin. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, Simon, what about you?
It's an interesting option. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Your thoughts?
It's definitely a delivery system for the knights. So the knights are the central part of the army, and the 2 Petchneg commands or stratioi are more your wingmen. Terrain, if you get a bad terrain run, since you've got nothing for trained troops, that can really hamper you. But otherwise, again, all stick, all bow, you can run up and shoot someone, run away for some part of the army, and the rest of it will pick a fight. So it'll be all good fun.
Okay, interesting. Well, let's flip over to to the list I chose as well. Now, I actually chose Nicosia as well. I think it was that same thought process of.
Right, I think it's Nicaea. It's Nicaea, not Nicosia.
Nicaea and then Nicaea and Nicosia. What's a Nicaea between friends? And I think it was that opportunity for 6 different 6 knights, as opposed to without having to bring in the Serbians. I think the Serbians, once they get medieval heavy knights, they just start to be a little expensive, and it's an ally. And I thought you could get 6 in here. What I did with it, I didn't quite get up to the 4 aggression, but I did get up to 25 units, which was I thought was quite a big count. And mine's got 2 near identical commands as well, but I've split the knights 3 and 3 on the idea that they can operate either together or separately. So the 2 commands which are similar are both got, and I went actually all impetuous. I just thought if they're going in, we'll go all in. So all 6 knights are impetuous, the 2 elite and the 4 ordinary, split 2 and 1 in those commands. And I embedded generals with all of them as well. It was really about just doubling down. Now, from my kind of experience with Arab armies, I'm a big fan of the super cheap, mediocre, medium cavalry impact, because at 6 points each, when they work really, really well. And at 6 points each, they're almost as cheap as light infantry in some ways. So both of those knight commands are 3 knights plus 2 medium cavalry impact mediocre to give you a width of 5. And then I've thought to screen them with 3 light infantry in one command. So this hasn't got any light horse. This second command, 2 knights, 1 knight, 2 medium cavalry, 3 light infantry. That's probably the one that sort of sits in the middle a bit. because it doesn't need to extend out to the wings. And then there's the other command: 2 knights, 1 knight, 2 medium cavalry, 3 light cavalry bow, which is starting to be a big number, which could sit in front of the knights or the medium cavalry, or could extend it out. And then just 1 light infantry bow with that one as well. That's the knight delivery system. And then I used the brilliant CNC for a kind of more, doing a few more things commands. So I took the Varaldiot Guardsman, the elite medium cavalry bow, to give you a little bit of shooting poke, 2 more medium Pechenegs to give you another couple of shooting medium cavalry, 2 light cavalry bow in there to extend that out. So there's 6 shooters there, and 2 of the ordinary heavy cavalry impact, same as Tamzin. So it's got a bit of that impact cutting edge, but it's got a decent amount of shooting as well. So that floats around. I think, again, same as Tamzin, you look at the infantry here and think there's so little of it that it just is almost not worth having any at all. And the job is just to try and clear terrain out the way and try and fight on a much more open field. There's a vague thought that 2 light infantry javelin men can hide in somewhere if they need to do a little bit of contesting, but not really. And it's just absolutely double down on getting 6 impetuous knights, 2 with embedded generals into somebody, and then supporting them with, well, again, 6 impact cavalry, but then there's 4 medium cavalry with bow as well here, and a little bit of light infantry. So it's almost doing the same thing. It's very, very similar in concept. It's gone for the no infantry. It's just doing it in a slightly different way. But I don't know, running in the same order. Dave, what's your thoughts on this one?
I think I like this version because I think 25 is strong, and I think if you're going to go with this mounted version, I would go for sheer numbers. I'd use all the medium cavalry impact. I probably wouldn't make a mediocre, but I would use them. And I'd get quite a few light horse in there to protect the knights and things like that. I might even take light foot to protect the knights, to help them in their delivery. I think included generals is not a bad idea. Neither would be the ones I would choose. I would definitely choose the Paleogean, and that's the way I've always seen it, and I think that's a decent army. But I think if you're going to go for an all cavalry version, go for mass numbers, take the cheapest possible medium cavalry. Yeah, Tim's version is definitely winning it for me.
Okay, Peter, what about you? I know it's not badgering in having all the knights in one go, which must be disappointing for you, but
it is slightly. I mean, like Dave was saying, with the Paleogean, you could actually have your medium Serbian knights and really go full knight, full barrel, and stack it up like there's no tomorrow. However, for this, I like what you've done, but some of the bits I think you're going to have a problem. Having the competent generals included with the medium knights, with that much cavalry, if you're not clearing out that first round, you're not going to be able to move your medium cavalry or your light cavalry around, because it's going to take too much points, because it's an extra point to move anything. So when they're in combat, that's why, I'm a big fan of the commanders and the knights included, so the commander included with the knights, but in making more of that of a micro command, that you're not worrying about, dealing with several medium cavalry. I like the idea if you had one which was competent, but you had the medium cavalry there, because then they could support either side, either on the micro command to fill in, or around the edge. I'd do that and just bring out 3 points, and maybe have 2 brilliant and 1 ordinary general, and the ordinary general just being one command of, say, 3 knights just going in with a couple of light infantry and just storming. They are going straight ahead. You don't care. They're going to hit. It's that general going in. They're the ones going to mess things up. It's great. Lovely. But then you want to have the other commander to have the points, the flexibility. So having 2 brilliant, 1 ordinary would really bracket it, especially as you could start off the deployment by, here's my 3 knights with a general in, what are you going to do about it? And then you've got the flexibility on the other 2 just to really fox them with a decent number of troops that you're putting down, because you've got decent numbers. I agree with Dave. I'd maybe change it a little bit with the light infantry supporting. So maybe if you just dropped one medium cavalry, you could have it move up a bit. The only problem with mediocre is that it's very easy to shoot at. It's very easy to get the hits on mediocre cavalry, and there's a lot of opposition at this point where you've got half and half shooters. So you've got the possibility that they're going to get shot down very quickly. And yes, they're low points, but you want them to survive a little bit. But otherwise, I like it. I like both lists, the two nice heavy hitting lists going in. This one, although you got the numbers, I think Tamzin wins it for me, because I think as soon as you hit, you're going to lose a lot of control. So unless you win that first bound, it's going to be quite easy to pick off and surround your guys.
Yeah, I suppose it's whether, that elite medium knight's going to go through in 2 turns, because you're going to charge in, he's going to fight. There's then going to be the opponent's bound, he's going to fight again. And I think also, to be fair, I was putting this list together today on the back of using generals on medium impetuous knights yesterday, and they did very well. So I think I've got I've got a very favourable view of them at the moment, but I can see plucking one of them out maybe.
But you can always, if it's favourable, you can always say I'm including it in the bound.
Yeah.
When you go into the battle, if you go, this is going to be a 4-1, I want to make sure I finish him off. You can always say that it is included. It gives you the option. It's not precluding you from it. It's not committing you to it.
Yeah, it makes one of them. You can make one of them unreliable or something to squeeze those max points without messing around too much. Simon, what do you think? What do you think?
It's a different take. I've never really tried the medium cavalry impact mediocre. I generally avoid mediocre trips because I've had a few bad runs with them. But I can see them running around with on your flanks, because they'll annoy light horse to a little degree, because as soon as they can shoot you, you got a reasonably good chance of catching them, because one can slide around because you can ignore your Zoc. So medium cavalry impact mediocre can resolve a few light horse. Otherwise, you've got a fistful of knights coming storming at you. I'd probably drop the commanders and the 2 knight commands to ordinary, just because if you do lose a knight, you don't lose so many points for losing the knight, the general, and then a competent general. You're losing a little bit less, because that would free you up 6 points. You might be able to get a light horse or something like that to keep your initiative something similar. But again, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Really close to getting the initiative up to the. You could put another light horse in, couldn't you, and drop those back.
Yeah,
back down.
Because included generals that are
you got 6 light cav. Oh no, you haven't.
No, just 5. Just 5. It's really close. Yeah. Okay. And Andy, what do you think on this one?
I don't think that's as well put together as it might be. For a start, you've got 5 light cavalry, which is a very inefficient number of them.
Yes.
Secondly, I think that 2 included generals in fighter units in different commands does risk one or both commands being ground to a halt when if a knight gets in combat and can't break through. I think too many of the mediocre guys, I mean, they do suck up arrows, something horrible. What I'd be inclined to do as a minimum tweak for your army, I think, is to perhaps take out one of the Peshmerga medium cavalry bow and use that on bumping up all the mediocre guys to ordinary.
Okay.
And then you've got 1 point, and if you can make a point from somewhere else, you can find something else to make 6. Either go for 6 light cavalry or go for 4. I think 5's unless you've got nothing else to do with the points, that's not what I would do. And I think if you've got 24 units rather than 25, it's not going to degrade the army that much, particularly as the unit you're losing is a medium cavalry bow. It's not such a crucial unit not to have in your army.
Yeah, I think those medium cavalry impact, the mediocres are really, well, both of them are in commands where they've got, the first one's got 3 screening light foot, the other one's got 3 screening light cavalry and a light foot as well. So hopefully you can keep them out of bow range. And the fact they're mediocre doesn't make a lot of difference when you're shooting at them, because they're still medium cavalry. They still attract arrows whether they're ordinary or medium. But what I found is even mediocre, even if they take a hit, that means they're still fighting against light horse or normal cavalry at evens. So you can use them super cheaply to drive off any, even taking some losses with them to drive off enemy light horse. And when they get extra width and start getting in the flanks, they really do some damage. But it's a bit of one of my novelty troop types that they're probably a little bit overcooked. And
I wouldn't say chuck them all out, but I just think having 4 is a bit risky.
Yeah, no, you may well be right. Okay, well let's quickly run down the list then. So, Adam, sorry, I've missed you off the screen. Sorry, I'm looking on the little strip down the side, and you disappeared behind your beer glass there.
Sorry, my comment on this list is the exact opposite of Dave's. Dave said that with a mounted army, he would incline to make it big. My view is with a mounted army, I'll be inclined to try and make it manoeuvrable. And I think this army, weirdly enough, is too big because where you've got the 6 Frankish knights, if they all die, you've kind of lost, and then it gets boring waiting for the army to go. So you might as well make it smaller and use the points that you save to make it more manoeuvrable and making sure you're getting the Franks in the right place. So I would go with not having generals included, because I remember having a game against you. You had Sassanids and you had an included general, and I said, "Oh, isn't that a risk?" And you said, "Oh, well, it's included with a elite cataphract. What could possibly go wrong?" So there was a
Q6-1.
Yeah, and I've just going to make a comment here. The included generals have to be in a stratioti.
Yeah. Oh, it can't be with the Frankish knights. Oh, right.
Included generals in your medium cavalry mediocre.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's probably not a good idea then, is it? No, that doesn't work quite so well.
Make it smaller and don't include them, because you've always got the choice to throw them in anyhow. On the whole, I would have said having the Franks in 2 different commands is a good thing because you get the choice of being flexible. But I can't remember who said about that makes 2 commands moving at 3 rather than 4.
No, that's a good comment, Randy. Yeah.
Yeah, which is actually a thing that I didn't think of myself. But I'm impressed by.
Okay. All right. So making the list legal then probably drops the medium cavalry impact out, knocks it down to 24, but does disinclude the 2 generals then from that command, which is kind of a little bit of fixing on the fly. But given it's illegal, that's probably necessary to do.
But I would say you could still make it smaller and make it
it's not illegal. It's just a bit daft.
Yeah, it's just mental, isn't it? Yeah, true. Yeah.
Making it smaller, but making it a better knight delivery system would be, because if the 6 knights go, you kind of got nothing else to do anything with anyhow.
Which is why you take the Pillion guys with the Serb allies and just get a wall of knights.
Yeah. Just get more of them.
Hail of the Aegean is the way to go.
Serb allies.
Yeah. Hail of the Aegean is really good because then you get the sort of like the Almugavars in it as well. They're really good.
Yeah, you can get medium cavalry bow elites as well.
Yeah.
Yep. Not which I've got in this one, but the Varadiot Guardsmen. So, all right, let's run down the list then. So now that Tamzin has cleverly spotted my list was illegal in the way it was set up, and I've done a slight tweak to.
Not illegal, as I say, not illegal.
No, true, not illegal. Look, there's a little star next to Frankish knights, so that was how it was. So, Dave, which of the 2 are you leaning towards? Let's flip the.
I'm changing my mind, and I'm going with Tamzin list because I think you having your 2 commands with impetuous knight generals included is really dangerous.
But we've said that that's not actually legal, so I'm not doing that anymore.
Okay, right. I'd still go with Tamzin's.
Yeah, it's the 6 in the block, isn't it? Peter, what about you? Are you going 6 in the block full badger or the split?
Well, I didn't like your illegal list, but I do like your legal one. I just like the idea of playing around with the medium horse. With the legal list, it gives me a lot more flexibility because you could be as annoying as hell with those medium cavalry, even though they're really dross. It's just another thing for someone else to worry about while you're delivering the knights and getting them stomped in.
Yeah, I suppose it's an extra initiative in Tamzin's list. 2 less units, but the medium cavalry are a bit better. Is kind of the mix. So which one would you go for again?
Go for your now legal one.
Now legal one. Simon, what about you?
I'd go the Tamzin's list. I just like the having no mediocre, and all the real troops have a big stick, so you can pick a fight somewhere. So you've got 7, 10, 13 troops with impact. Okay, yes, another knight army will give them a bit of a hiding, but still 13 units that can charge in and cause some damage. All good fun.
Yeah, it's doing the heavy
12.
cavalry. Andy, what about you?
I think I prefer Tamzin's list. It's simpler and more straightforward, and I think yours has got some structural problems, as I mentioned before.
Okay. Adam, what about you?
Tamzin's for all the reasons that's been discussed.
It's all smaller. Okay, then. So that's a 4-1. So there we go. The list section is done. Music. There's always one of these is slightly wrong every week, isn't it?
Yep, that's
Your IT manager.
No, we are maintaining the Central London motto
of incompetence, aren't we? For sure.
Yeah, we can't even get a list correctly.
Right. So having
Tim's list was legal.
Yes, but just wrong. Even though that little star was there. So now that we've thoroughly dissected that list, we need to call in our.
That's not a star next to Frankish Knight.
No, that's not just a thing on your. It is. It's not a thing on your screen.
There it is.
Speck of coffee.
It's a speck of dust on your screen.
This means war.
So I think we need to call in the IT manager now to pull up random.org and look for the new list of the week. So here we go. Sound effects of the IT manager coming in.
List 27.
27 is
the
very early one.
No,
what the hell are they?
Ugaritz.
That's an interesting one. That's a classic list from the DBM days, isn't it?
It's indeed.
7. Let's all flick through for this one. Urartu.
It's really good army.
Sister list to the Uvavu, obviously, for fans of whatever it was. So what have we got? The Urartu was the kingdom related around Lake Van. Light chariots, heavy chariots impact, medium cavalry bow, which are good. Mixed swordsman, heavy swordsman. It's a good one. So who's putting their hand up for biblical? Adam, I think you were saying you're a man with a lot of biblical malarkey. And I think you've skipped a week, so it may well be your turn to go with this one.
I can rock and roll that, yeah.
And Mr. Saunders, you've talked quite a lot about painting chariots in recent weeks.
Now
that you've got your Egyptians, can we force you to look at this list and then suddenly you'll realise you need to paint up yet another one?
Yeah, no, I think I came second with a Ugarit army at the London one-dayer.
So no pressure for Adam then on this one.
I thought you were going to say you came second in a game.
Right.
I did that yesterday. I came second. I was lucky to come second.
I think I can pull up the list with all the good reasons for it.
Right, that's good then. So we'll talk a Saunders versus Adam special next week, and then that takes us neatly into that section, which is Andy's quiz. Yes, much more up-tempo French music than the dirge of retreating from Moscow that I now realise we picked before. So, Andy, tell us, remind us of the questions from last week and tell us what your questions are from this week.
Right, well, last week was about missing bits, and there were 3 questions, as usual. Before Robert the Bruce died in 1329 and was buried at Dunfermline, he directed his heart should be taken on crusade to Jerusalem before being brought back to be buried at Melrose Abbey. Sir James Douglas took the heart with him in a metal casket which he wore round his neck until he was killed in crusade. But in which non-Middle Eastern country was that?
Crusade
Germany?
Must be Germany? Poland?
Spain.
Spain? Okay.
Yeah, because the Reconquista beating up all the Moors and stuff like that.
Oh, that counts as a crusade, I guess. Oh,
yeah,
well.
you got to get out a hell-free card for going there as well.
Yes, okay. That's a win then.
Right. Okay. Number 2. On 30th of April every year, the French Foreign Legion parades past the wooden hand of Commandant d'Anjou of the 1st Battalion of the Legion, the commander of a force of 65 legionnaires who in 1863 resisted an enemy force of 2,000 to 3,000 enemies until their number was reduced to 3. What was the name of that battle?
What a Scooby.
It was against the Mexicans, wasn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
It was called Cameroon, and it was in Mexico. It was kind of the French Foreign Legion's version of the Alamo.
French Foreign Legion were in the Alamo. Were in Mexico.
Tell me about the Mexican invasion, the French intervention in Mexico. I think is the next.
Right.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie 7 Mules for Sister Sarah? And that?
Yes, I guess I
2
have.
Mules for Sister Sarah with Clint Eastwood. He basically had a Bourbon Austrian prince put on the throne, and the French Foreign Legion tried to keep him there.
He was the younger brother of
the Austrian Emperor, Maximilian.
Yeah.
To be honest, that sounds like nonsense. Apart from it's true.
Yes, it does,
yeah.
really, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
This is
black and white Zorro movies. You have the French Foreign.
Yeah, this is Napoleon III thinking, well, I can do good stuff as well on a foreign international stage. Right.
Okay.
And the
Number
third
3.
question, right, let me just fire it up on my phone here. Right. Third one was, despite losing an eye in aerial combat in 1942, the top surviving Japanese fighter ace took to the skies again as a combat pilot in 1944. Over Iwo Jima, he took off in his Zero during an American carrier raid to join up with a squadron of Zeros, only to discover too late they were American Hellcats and outnumbered him 15-1. He managed to maneuver the combat back over Iwo Jima, where Japanese flak drove off the Americans. His plane had not been hit even once during the air battle. What was the name of this Japanese pilot?
Captain Flash.
No, his name was Saburo Sakai, and if you ever get a chance to read it, there's a brilliant biography of him. It was basically an autobiography translated. It's called Samurai by a guy called Martin Kadan. If you get a chance to read it, it's a terrific read.
Okay. All right. So, and imagine it, Lenzel. So, good. Thank you for those questions. That was last week. This week, it's called, the theme this week is Language Timothy. And it's, which historical generals use the following naughty words? At the Battle of Eylau in 1807, this commander of the French Imperial Guard cavalry said to his troops, when they were being struck by occasional stray musket balls, "On ôte les têtes, la mitraille n'est pas de la merde," which has been translated as, "Don't duck, these are bullets, not turds." Okay. I'm guessing he was a Frenchman, but yep.
Well, he was, yes. As I just said, French Imperial Guard cavalry general, right?
Yep.
Right. At the Battle of Waterloo, when called on to surrender, which Imperial Guard commander gave a disdainful reply? There's 2 versions of what he was reputed to have said. One is, "La garde meurt, mais ils ne seront pas," which is, the guard dies, it doesn't surrender. And the other is, "merde," which I'm not going to translate.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, right. So who was the man who said one of those 2 things? The third one is, which American general, when called on to surrender the town of Bastogne to the Germans in December 1944, replied nuts, which is ruder in American than in English idiom.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard.
This week, I've got a bonus question for you this week, and it's an audio clip. We hear 2 actors here. One of them is Sean Bean as Sharp, who is the voice of Harper.
What an idiot. What a dirty little Dutch buffle-brained bastard. From his pox crown up his royal pop stars. The blood-blooded twat. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear.
Okay. That's pretty clear. That came across loud and clear for sure.
I just couldn't resist it. So who plays, what's the name of the actor who plays Sergeant Harper?
Okay. Brilliant. Well, that's 3 questions and a bonus and some comedy swear words. So that's a fantastic way to finish the quiz.
Question, comment les voir? Question, le trou est sans fond. Question, la légende le dit. Question, elle dit aussi. Question, c'est une maladie. Question.
Well, with the quiz music receding into the background, we're almost starting to recede into the background as well. So we just have time for a brief run around of what's on the painting table this week. So, now, Mr. Saunders, you're painting as we speak. I think you've given us a bit of a teaser. There's a lot of Breton jerseys. What's coming up this week for you?
Well, I claimed I'd finished the Ottomans, but I'm actually finishing the Ottomans as we speak, because I'm doing some Ottoman slingers and some Ottoman levy, because this Ottoman army is going to go into action next Monday at the club. We're going to take them in there and disprove this theory that medium knights will stomp them. Right. But yeah, other than that, it's onwards with the Franks. Yeah, the war band to finish all war bands, I think is going to be my expression.
So this time next week you'll be painting up Serbs, won't you? Having realised that you need them to make the Ottomans work properly.
Yeah, exactly. That. Well, I'll just
some Badger Serbs
and the knights.
Yeah. All right, King Badger. What are you painting this week?
I'm going full on Dremel and drilling various things, because hopefully my Spanish knights will turn up and I can drill out hands. And now I've got it charged up, and I didn't manage to drill through myself for 1 week. Obviously, I'll do it this week. So I'll be finishing off those and able to get my Spanish badges on the table.
Is that the Donington figures that you're waiting for, was it? Or
yes, yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
So
do you know they're on their way?
Yep. Yes. Yeah. I dropped a line to Damien, so hopefully I should have them sometime this week. And a quick spray, non-gold for once. Yeah. And they'll be looking pretty good.
If I remember correctly, some of his knights, the spears or the lances come with tiny little discs that you can kind of put over the lances, so that it gives you a plate.
Van plates.
Hand plates or whatever they are. Yeah.
Van plates.
Van plates. There you go. Van plates. Yeah. So that's a proper little thing. So there's an extra bit of detail there that you don't get on many, but you use them on proper wire spears.
So okay. I'm going to be looking up various dodgy military orders in Spanish and trying to pick one that didn't have a too dodgy history, like some of the other military orders have. If you look too deeply.
Yes, indeed. So
just to Google Spanish orders who didn't burn anyone.
Yes, it's a very short
results
no
0.
Yeah. Adam, what's on your painting table? You've got some shields to finish, you said, and is that the main project?
There's two answers to this question. The first answer is what I want to do, because I've got the shields to finish, and then want to go on and do some Roman legionaries, because usually I always change what I'm doing. So I'll do I've got at least two separate projects on the go at once, so I don't get bored. But I'm quite pleased with getting these 28mm Romans done. So what I want to do is carry on with that and get some legion sheets done. But the other answer to this question is what my wife's telling me that I'm going to paint, and that will be my children's bedrooms.
Right. Okay. You'll be going.
I thought from where you got to say you paint your children.
Yeah. Go with the broad brush approach potentially. So Andy, what do you got this week? More questions about what brush to use on an elephant?
No, I've just gone for it with the elephant. I've more or less finished the elephants now, and I'll be moving on probably to camels. Because I did take to heart what Adam said a couple of weeks ago, although I was thinking about it anyway. And I had kind of run out of 15mm projects to do, but I ordered some more stuff from War and Empire. So I've got various little filler-in bits, including the Thracians, of which I've forgotten. I already had 2 bags. I've got some more Norman Knights for dismounts, camels, 1 or 2 other bits. So that'll keep me entertained for a little while.
Okay. Sorry, Andy, I realise I was probably there, but what did I say a couple of weeks ago?
I said something I said I probably won't paint any more 15mm figures for a while, and you said go and wash your mouth out.
Oh, okay.
That sounds like you.
I'm not offended. I mean, it was just the comment hit home, and I thought, well, you're obviously right, so I better do that.
That's good. Well, I think this week for me, it's going to be starting painting horses, which is just that first boring bit of slopping on colour. trying to keep it sort of watered down a little bit so that it gets some texture onto it across an enormous number of horses, and then going through that never-ending debate of, do I rebase my Arab Saga army and mold it in with all these other ones because I can't remember the last time I ever played Saga, or do I not, because then that would only leave me with Vikings for Saga if I play Saga, and that's a bit boring. Even though the Arabs aren't very good, they're just different, and it would suddenly render all of my Saga books entirely pointless.
Well, if we ever got together, I could lend you a Saga army. I've got Anglo-Danes, I've got the Irish now, and I've got Vikings.
Or Tim.
But I've got Vikings and Arabs, so I kind of, I think I'm leaning on keeping them because painting Arabs is quite fun.
And Tim, you've got a Saga army ready. Keep it. You're painting Arabs. Just paint a few more, you lazy sod.
It's whether I buy some metal ones for extreme cost, or whether I buy another box of the plastics.
Where else are you going to go?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Yeah, we're not going out anywhere at all. So lockdown isn't quite finished yet. We're not flying around the world doing anything glamorous on the gaming front at all. And then Simon, what about you? What's your painting this week to wrap us up? Oh, sorry, no, not quite to wrap us up. To wrap us up, we'll finish with Tamzin. Yes, of course.
Tamzin gives you a very stern look there.
Yes, indeed, very hard stare. Yeah.
For me, simply 6mm modern British.
Oh, that's your plucking hairs out of a toothbrush.
And I'm also
the toothbrush of war.
Yep, and I'm scaringly getting down to the bottom of the pit. I'm down to after this. I've got some crossbowmen, so I can see some orders happening shortly because lockdown is going to continue. Need to buy some more troops. Don't know what, but
28 mils the way forward. That's my theory. And so sorry, almost accidentally forgot, even though it wasn't deliberate because you beat me 4-1 on the army list choice and pointed out my list was illegal. So Tamzin, you're getting onto some figures this week, I think.
Yeah, I've got a couple of figures. As I said earlier, got a couple of figures on the workbench, which will be starting tomorrow. There for Judge Dredd. There's sort of a ganger on a bike. Two people on grab surfboards. Also got a sort of a passed out hobo.
Right. Okay. A drunken person.
And there's a chimp pillion rider for the biker.
Well, everybody needs a chimp pillion rider, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. For every proper biker, I think.
And
Left turn, Clive.
Then I've got probably get a cut. If I get to Halfords, get some more white primer. I'll be working on a couple more buildings.
Okay.
I've also placed orders. Last couple of days, I've placed orders for figures for Infamy.
Ah, right. You did get drawn in. Having read the rules, you got more tempted.
Done it in 50. Decided to do it in 15mm, and so the base of figures, so I can also use them for ADLG.
Okay. All right. Put them all together. Brilliant. Excellent stuff. All right. Well, I think on that note, a new scale, a new rule set, a new set of painting to move us on. That's a very good thing. This is week number 18, I think, as we said at the beginning, and so that means we're within a couple of weeks of hitting 20 as lockdown does gradually start to ease. So I suspect maybe one of the other things for us all to do is over the next couple of weeks is perhaps do a quick inventory of everything that we've painted up over the last 20 weeks of lockdown, and in episode number 20, the one after next, we'll kind of do a recap session on what we've actually gone through, and just see if we can actually remember and count all the different units and things that have snuck in.
Now the important question: will this episode be passed on to our wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, other halves, or other significant managers of the budget? Because it could get embarrassing.
Simon, no one listens to this. I don't think never mind anybody you know. I think we're all safe on that one.
Yeah. No one that's going to grass this up.
No, but I think we're all safe on that one. And as we gradually start returning to face-to-face gaming as well.
Well, my wife would say, "Look, if he's painting, I know where he is."
Yes, yeah, in the kitchen, I can see. Yeah. We know where you are as well. That's the answer. So, look, on that note, we've got another couple of weeks to count this stuff up then as we get towards number 20. So thanks, everybody, again. Thank you for listening. And as you stay safe out there, and goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
One last point. Don't forget Tchaikovsky, 1812 Overture.
The 1812 Overture, yes. I suppose that's the only upside, isn't it?
Perhaps as play-out music on this segment.
Possibly. Yes, we'll look forward to the 1812 Overture.
And War and Peace.
And War and Peace. Or War and Beatty.